Hey, this is Manga Haul number 8, and I got a few books. I got a lot of Love Hina. I got the entire collection. But other than that, I'll start off with Way of the House Husband Volume 2. This is actually really hard for me to find, but I finally got it last night, read through it. So, I mean, it's still 13 bucks, but it's a relatively fast read, so I had it done in about a half hour. There's not a lot of words. It's mostly just kind of here's a quick setup, and usually punchline at the end, a couple funny moments in between, contrasting characters, and they look like they should be taken really serious, but everything kind of fits in this world really nicely. But the art is really good. A little bit of that great teacher Onizuka. Maybe not quite to that extreme, but a lot of characters will be drawn with a super serious and sometimes kind of an ugly looking face to kind of just emphasize the contrasting. It should be a serious moment, but it's actually super hilarious. Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much because a lot of these jokes are like really like specific to those chapters. So if you kind of spoil the punchline, you kind of ruin that whole chapter. Yeah, it was like really hard for me to find the second volume, but I finally ran across it, was able to pick it up, and now I can continue. But yeah, as far as I know, only the volume 2 was hard for me to get, so at this point I should be able to keep reading it pretty easily. Then I have Akira volume 2. I haven't finished the first volume, but this, and along with Komi Can't Communicate, were on like the discount shelf at Barnes & Noble, so I was there in town anyway, so I picked them up. So I haven't really gotten read to this one yet, but I know what Akira's about. It should still be within what's happening with the movie. Just by flipping through, you can kind of tell where maybe it's taking place but the storyline's different in the anime, so it's interesting to see how things are different. So I haven't gotten that far yet, but we're still kind of cruising along. Then I have Komi Can't Communicate. I've been looking for a volume for this for a little while. Found it on the discount shelf in Barnes & Noble, or at least they're overstock. I don't know if it was discount. I didn't check my receipt if they actually gave me a discount on it or not, but I hear was finally getting anime, so I figured I'd start reading it. So it seems to me recently I've been into a lot more easy reading, maybe rom-com stuff. I don't have to struggle with like trying to remember where I was, what was happening, which character were we focusing on at any particular part in the story. Like I've been reading so many other series that have been more serious plot lines and characters and character development. It's been really refreshing just to read some more episodic storylines with characters that are easy to keep up with than heavy storylines. But I haven't gotten too far into Komi Can't Communicate yet. Just a couple chapters. But what I've been reading a lot of recently has been Love Hina. So far, I'm already 7 volumes in. I am missing one book out of the set. I'm waiting for that to arrive. It might be here by end of the week, next week sometime, depending on how long it takes to ship here. I had to specifically search for the volume 11 in this set because it wasn't included in this. These books are a little banged up. I don't imagine it's easy to find a manga this old anyway. So it was on the shelf at a local store, so I picked it up. I'm actually really surprised because I have read Nigima before, and that's the series Ken Akamatsu made after this. And there's really no action in this, but there's been a couple times where characters almost like pretend to fight, and it looks very much like something out of Nigima. It's almost like It's almost like Ken Akamatsu really wanted to draw some kind of action series. There's the sword girl, and she actually uses her fancy techniques, and she'll cut rocks in half or do something crazy, and it's this big huge effect, huge explosion, whatever. The female characters do like to kick the crap out of our main character. Naru here is like always doing like these really like well executed martial arts moves on him. So it's like there's a lot of little extra martial arts thrown in here when you wouldn't expect it. And the art style is starting to creep up to be a lot like Nigima. At first it was a little bit rougher, but now it's starting to get really refined by now. It's looking really good. It's actually really funny. I like the storyline a lot. It actually has more of a progressing storyline than I was expecting. The character relationships are kind of always changing a little bit. We're kind of at this point in the series, volume 6. I'm about halfway through. My mistake. I'm actually about halfway through volume 6 right now. But at this point, Naru and Kitaro, they're actually more just almost like a casual relationship now. Like they seem like they're just actually really good friends. They don't like avoid each other anymore. They've been studying a lot together, so they just kind of hang out and they actually do things just together a lot. And so basically, they're in a pretty much a pseudo relationship right now. Actually, really close to progressing that relationship. I can kind of feel it coming finally. I imagine by maybe a few more volumes, and we'll see how this progresses. But the situations are actually always really funny. There's always a different scenario going on, so it's like even though it's just the same core characters and roughly the same setting a lot, it never gets too dull. Some characters like her, like they've been introduced earlier. They part ways for a while, then they surprisingly they come back later. So that's kind of nice that you can cycle in characters like that. One thing I was surprised when I started reading Love Hina is that I was surprised by how few people are actually living in, are actually in this girls' dorm. Because in Nigima, there's like 30 girls. You got to keep track in that manga, and you don't even get introduced to all of them until like volume 30. Like literally, I'm not even exaggerating. But here you get a much smaller cast of characters, and so they all get a little bit more screen time, and they all get a little bit more development like over time. And there's also a little bit less fan service than I was expecting to, but I didn't really. It's been a long time since I read Nigima, so I wasn't like really sure like how often that stuff would come up. But there's a lot less of that than I was expecting here, which is pretty good. Maybe my one real gripe about the whole show is that how often that the joke is used that Kitaro like falls over, and usually that leads him to pulling some article of clothing off whoever he just fell on, and then obviously he's like mistaken for being did that on purpose, and then they kick him into space. They just completely like beat the crap out of him anytime. It's pretty much every single time. But literally the most interesting part about Kitaro getting the shit kicked out of him all the time is that Naru usually uses some kind of like a martial arts technique on him, and it's like that joke is used like literally multiple times, like every chapter. So that's maybe my one big gripe. But I'm only halfway through, so I'd like to see where the story progresses. It could get really good actually by the end here because everything's going to start ramping up. But we're probably going to get a whole nother cycle through with all the characters, and maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe I don't think it's going to introduce any more characters, but so far the biggest thing I really like about it, it's just really nice to get immersed in a really fun series again. Something I can read through the whole thing in a relatively short amount of time, but blow through the whole thing entirely, and just kind of absorb this storyline. So that's kind of nice. Probably next thing we're gonna do with that is I really do want to read Akira a lot, and really like kind of dive into that and see what's all about and see how it's different from the movie. And I want to really see what happens after that, but like in here it's yeah, like I dig all the characters a lot. They're all really cool. They all have their own like really funny quirk about them that makes them interesting to read about or whatever's happening to them. But yeah, I'll probably have another update when I finish through this. It might be relatively quickly that I can do that, since I think I just picked these up this weekend and I'm almost I'm halfway through so far already. So the nice thing about Love Hina is that it's actually pretty dense. It's just like Nigima. I remember it because Nigima, I remember reading it, and it would take me a good chunk of time to get through a single volume because there's plenty of words in here, and it's relatively dense. So there's a lot going on panel to panel. So you're kind of and sometimes I'm just a bad reader and I got to reread stuff over and over again to make sure, okay, what was actually happening, what actually was said, because I like to zone out when I'm reading. But as long as I stay immersed, I can flip through it pretty quickly and get through it. But the art's really good, so I spent enough time looking at the art, and there's pretty much everyone gets plenty of screen time and plenty of dialogue, so you're always trying to pay attention to what everyone's saying. So there's always plenty of time for characters to be on screen. So that's kind of the nice thing. It's that it's really dense. So even if it's only 14 volumes, it's a pretty dense 14 volumes. The same way that it took me a long time to read through all of Nigima when I had that, because it was a dense 30 volumes. It felt like a lot more than that. Obviously not as dense as something like Death Note. Death Note is a 12-volume series that feels like a 30-volume series. It's just, that's just how dense it is. Nigima is like a little bit, maybe half that. It's a 14-volume series that feels like a 20-volume series. But yeah, that's all my manga for today. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do another quick pickup with WriteStuff.com and get another good lot. I think I got a new idea for how I'm gonna do these videos. Instead of doing so many onesie twosies and then volumes, I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna do more of this, where I'll buy a larger set of manga, so that way the video's a little bit more focused. I can focus on what to talk about. So maybe I'll try that in the future. So if you want me to keep, then that's what I was going to ask you, is that if you wanted me to keep doing it this way, kind of maybe a focus on a single series, but have a couple extra to talk about during the video, or if you want me just to get a big lot and be able to talk about a single set like this, maybe. Yeah, just let me know if that sounds whichever way you think would be more engaging for you. That's all I really have to show for right now, so see you later.